Hello, I'm Dr. Watkins, and thank you for coming out. Today we are going to talk about weight loss, and I'm going to try to keep this nice and tight and meaty, okay? So, first off, weight loss, it's an American hobby.
Yes.
You know, it really is. And you have to ask the question, why? Like, what's going on that we, as our number one pastime, are always thinking about losing weight? Right? We know that weight, too much excess weight, does contribute to poorer health, right? We know it leads toward heart disease, diabetes, all sorts of things, right? So I'm going to ask you, and you're going to get real excited, why? Why does excess weight lead to poor health? Why does it lead to diabetes? Why does it lead to heart disease? What happens? What's going on?
Your body has to work harder?
Yeah, it does have to work harder.
Well, it affects a lot of your organs that deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, how? How
Clogging
specifically?
arteries.
Clogs arteries, but how? Does anybody know how this happens?
All the fat?
You probably do, but you're probably not thinking of it in this term. That how all of this happens, including how your body gets into the situation where it actually can accumulate excess weight, is inflammation. It's inflammation that harms the arteries. It's inflammation that harms the pancreas that leads to the degeneration. It's inflammation that harms your brain that creates a cascading event of your brain not being able to tell your body how to accurately run the body with energy and efficiency, right? So inflammation is going to be a key thing that we have to really understand and then take into consideration if we're going to lose weight. But how important is losing weight if you do not gain health? And how important is losing weight if you're just going to gain it back? So if you were to be able to, and there's 1,000 diets out there to do this, you can lose some weight. Everybody can do that. But if you can't keep it off, and if you did not decrease inflammation so that you can increase your body's ability to function and gain health, where are you? Back at square one. And you know what you got going against you? More than almost anything else, it took a scientist to discover this. This guy's name is Dr. Kessler. And what he actually discovered is we suffer from a condition called hypereating. Hypereating is an ability to be out of control around food. Okay? And there's a reason for that. It leads to emotional and stress eating. And the reason for that is the foods we eat in our American diet are literally manufactured to lead one to an addictive cycle where one will want to eat more of that same thing. So how easy is it going to be to lose weight and, more importantly, keep it off if we don't address this concept of hypereating, this actual physical manifestation of hypereating, where you eat whether you're hungry or not and you're out of control? Has to be addressed. Not every diet in the world even looks at that. They just look at what's the dynamic I need to do to get you to lose some pounds, and then good luck on you. So that's not how I work. That's not how our weight loss program works, because we've been from the beginning saying we must build health. It's like, let's let health drive the healing into losing weight. And the trick is everybody's different. There is no one-size-fits-all in doing this, because not everybody has the same metabolic defaults, injuries, that you can just say, well, this supplement and this diet, you're done, go for it, everybody will work. It's like you can't create health unless you know what you're trying to target in that individual. So it has to be specifically designed to that individual. It has to be customized. You have to take into consideration all of the factors that can be driving this inflammation leading to increased inflammation and decreased metabolism and decreased health even more in like this vicious loop over time. So yes, weight is a problem for health. Overweight is a problem for health. Inflammation is the bad guy inside of this, and we're going to look at all of that. The other missing piece here is beyond hyper eating, which is actually triggered because of the way the brain works. It has a pleasure cycle loop. It's run by dopamine. It's a dopamine pathway. And when dopamine goes up, it hits the pleasure center, gives you reward, 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 I like that. And then if it goes down, we don't like that. So we do things to make it go up. This is the addictive pathway. Whether alcohol is what turns your pleasure on, or drugs, or food, or gambling, it doesn't matter what it is. It's all the same phenomena. We have to address the brain and that pathway. We have to address the mind. And this is something we give attention to, kind of like, oh, and by the way, handle stress, do a journal, and handle the mind. Find out what are your triggers and things like that. How many of you have heard that before? That level of it? Absolutely. How many of you actually got the answer to do that? And that's where it always breaks down. And that's what I've been for the last 4 years in our program, has been trying to really hone into, okay, losing weight, that's actually almost the easy part of this. How do we get the mind, who's driven by our subconscious programs, and there's a lot of them in there, and a lot of them have to do with how we eat and when we eat. How do we get to that level and clear that down so that you actually aren't just a Pavlov's dog, ring the bell, I'm salivating? How do we do that so that it's not just trigger on, I do that? If you don't address that in a successful way, then I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like I'm floundering. I feel like I'm always like, what's the answer? I want the answer. But that's just me, I'm sure.
Yes, just you.
So I have been using different techniques that go after these belief systems, and we have actually helped a lot of people reducing their knee-jerk conditioned responses to a lot of the things in the world that made them go straight to food. So that's been a piece of it, and it's been pretty successful. It's not been exactly as successful as I wanted it to be, but then it takes people doing it beyond, for themselves, doing it beyond what I do and teach them to do. So that's been a piece of it. So I'm always like, well, it's like they were doing so well, and they lost all this weight, and then they just kind of, after a window of time, just some of them just kind of started falling back into those old patterns. It's like, well, don't remember we told you about this, watched out for it, and then let's go back and try to reiterate that these are the things that we need to do. So that's always been a little bit of a hitch for me, and I've been looking in more and more ways, how can I make this even more sound? How can I make this even more effective? So that it is easier perhaps for someone to get into the habit of doing things that will help on this mental mind level. And so I've added even more stress kind of relating things and neuroemotional techniques. I've added more pieces to this mind phenomenal level, and that we included in running people through and teaching them this in the weight loss program, because again, mind's got to be on board, and you've got to be able to do it for yourself. That's just a piece of it. So without that, it's really hard to predict long-term success in keeping it off and keeping the health benefits that you are gaining from bringing those problems down. So let's go right now, because we have a little bit of an overview, and look at what we're up against And so we can like look at, well, what kind of things do we have to know about so that we can address this, and how are we gonna do that individually as a group? So this is what we're up against. Now, I'm gonna read this off to you too, because it may not be actually big enough for everybody to see, but this is looking at inflammation. Now remember, we said inflammation's the bad guy, right? And we see something that's interesting here. Whether you can even read these words, we see something interesting here. That inflammation doesn't live in an ocean by itself. Inflammation is part of a web. It's like a spider web. And if I wiggle the spider web down here, the whole thing moves. So there's things that are going into increasing inflammation, and once they increase the inflammation, there's things that happen that mess up other phenomena in the body which drive inflammation back on. So we can see that this whole cycle, everything drives inflammation on. Not everybody has all of these things going on with them that can drive this phenomena. And this phenomena of inflammation, one of the worst things it can do is disrupt your brain. It's your brain that sets your metabolism. It's your brain that sets your set point. It's your brain that sets your hunger. It sets your thirst. It sets how fast you breathe, how fast you grow your hair. Your brain does pretty much everything, and your mind lives there. Sounds like an important place. So these are phenomena that when, and I kind of showed you this, but when you have inflammation in your body, like it or not, you have inflammation in the brain. Now, most of us have heard connections of inflammation in the brain. That's not good if you want to prevent Alzheimer's. That's not good if you want to prevent other neurodegenerative problems like Parkinson's. So inflammation in the brain, that can't be good. But here's an interesting phenomena that if you have inflammation in the gut, of course it makes more inflammation for the body. It actually, there's one line I didn't do, and inflammation of the gut makes inflammation of the brain. It is this cycle, but it actually, if you have inflammation in your gut, you have inflammation in your brain. That's just how this is. How many people have ever had some digestive issues? Just about everybody. Whether it's bloating, constipation, irritable bowel, diarrhea, whatever it is, they have something in common besides the brain, which definitely has that in common, but they also have the gut, what we call the micronome, which is the flora. Most of us hear about flora. The micronome is your personal, it's like a snowflake. It's your unique personal blend of flora that you populated your gut with as soon as you were born. It happens from your first breath, first gulp, your flora starts to lay down. And your personal micronome, if it ever gets unbalanced, causes inflammation. It can get imbalanced because of an infection. It can get imbalanced because you ate the wrong things. It can be imbalanced because your brain was disrupted and caused other irritable problems. Your immune system went off and then that got messed up. I mean, there's so many different pieces, we can't even speak to it. But your gut's got to be looked at. And a lot of us think, well, I've got, indigestion or heartburn. I'll just take this and then I'll be done with it. I don't feel the symptom, therefore I don't have a problem, right? So as long as I take the pill, and we always go like, oh, I ate a spicy food, so it's the food's fault. I got a heartburn or something, and that I take this, it goes away, I must be okay. But you're not, because heartburn is a sign of brain dysregulation, right? So brain's got to be something that's really looked at and addressed in all of this. What's the number one thing that an adult can do to really throw their gut off? Well, it could be to increase the permeability of the gut. So your gut is designed to take food in and let just the right molecules back into the body. Right? So your gut has these things we call tight junctions. So the cells around the gut, they all have a tight junction. And it's just tight enough that it lets, when you need to digest food and then let nutrients into the body, it's just tight enough that it opens up just enough to let itty bitty tiny nutrients back into the body where your body can then take it and use it for fuel and food and generation. Increasing that makes the gut leaky. It increases the tight junction too much, meaning things that are too big, molecules that are too big in the gut are now getting into the bloodstream. And that causes an immune reaction. Doesn't matter what the thing is, if a foreign invader enters the body, the immune system's turned on. That's its job. Well, in this situation where you get the tight junction too open, any molecule that's too big looks like an invader to the immune system. That starts an immune reaction, and the one thing that we really didn't put down on this chart is immune reactions are inflammation. That's what a white blood cell uses to kill something, inflammation. So it's a good thing. Inflammation is not only bad. You can't heal a cut without some inflammation. It's how it does it. But it's when inflammation goes too high or wild that we have a lot of problems. Okay, so what is the number one food that an American adult would eat that would increase intestinal permeability?
Sugar.
Interestingly enough, no. Sugar can do a lot of things to mess you up, but it doesn't increase the intestinal permeability in and of itself.
Grains.
Grains, yes, but which grain?
Wheat.
Wheat. And there is, now, this is people without an allergy to wheat, without an intolerance, without a gluten problem, without any issue to wheat. Every human being is going to be affected by a molecule in wheat called zonulin. Zonulin increases the opening of the tight junction in a healthy person with no wheat problem. How many years have you been eating wheat?
Too many.
Birth.
Our life.
Yeah, as soon as they put real food in your mouth, it was probably a wheat product. Right after they stopped you on milk products. Right? Really, early on, you're getting it. But it's not a gluten problem. It's just, that's what that molecule zonulin does in every healthy gut. So if you eat it now and then, got an immune system to handle that. You eat it 9 times a day for 50 years, you might have chronic gut issues, driving chronic brain inflammation, leading to health problems that you're wondering, why am I falling apart? And somebody told you, oh, you're older. That's like someone saying, oh, you got arthritis in this joint because this joint hurts. And it's just because you're older. And you say, well, why is this one not doing that? It's the same age. You know, it's really the same thing. We have things that have been going on for a long time, invisible to us, causing us to be wherever we are. Weight gain is a symptom of something. It's a symptom of something's not working right. We've been told it's only too many calories in and not enough exercise. And almost everybody's heard that that's not accurate. Too many calories does set you up for a problem, but too many calories in and not enough exercise is not the sole problem or reason for weight gain, because if you have a healthy metabolism, too many calories today get burned off tonight. While I'm sleeping, my metabolism pops up to burn off those extra calories in a healthy metabolic person. When you eat something and you can't burn it off, other things are going on that are signs that this is off. There's an imbalance. And one of the things that gets imbalanced early on is leptin. Leptin is a hormone that says, stop eating. Stop it.
I want that pill.
If you become resistant to leptin, in other words, your body ignores leptin, it makes your appetite go through the roof. Now, you guys have heard of insulin resistance. Let me explain this phenomena. Insulin resistance is I've got so much insulin in my blood because I have too much blood glucose. I have so much insulin in my blood that my cells have totally locked the door and don't listen. I can't hear you. And they become resistant to insulin. If something's resistant to insulin, it does a few things. So we looked at leptin. If leptin resistance is occurring, it leads to insulin resistance. Mostly because it increases your appetite and you're eating high sugar, we're back to hypereating. Insulin's going to lead to hypereating. Leptin will lead you to hypereating because you're like craving hungry all the time. When we look at insulin resistance, we know we have a high sugar, high carbohydrate diet. That leads to insulin resistance. Diets that are too acid, that leads to insulin resistance. Stress, that leads to insulin resistance. Estrogen, testosterone, sex hormone, thyroid, things like this also can lead to insulin resistance. So any hormonal imbalance is going to lead to insulin resistance. Then insulin resistance is going to do two things or more. One, it's going to suppress fat from being broken down. In other words, all the glucose in your bloodstream, which normally insulin would knock on a cell door and say, here's some energy, eat it up, and they would go, thank you very much. That's the ideal case. Insulin takes the glucose, delivers it to the cell, it gets eaten. That's ideal. Insulin resistance, glucose in the bloodstream, insulin way high, cells not listening, glucose stays high, cells are like, I'm hungry, but I don't know what to do, there's no food, stays high. All of this glucose now has to be converted to triglycerides by the liver. Triglycerides, that's that thing that you get your blood tested with, cholesterol, triglycerides. All these triglycerides, excess carbohydrate, are now turned into fat cells.
Yay. Yeah.
Yay! So these fat cells, as they increase, make hormones. Did you think that fat was only a storage cell? Mm-hmm. They have been telling us since I was in school, a fat cell, that just is something that, shove fat in and, it's a survival mechanism, there you go. Fat cells, interestingly enough, are chemical factories. Each and every fat cell can make hormones. In fact, they can make forms of estrogen. They also make a small little hormone. It's not a true hormone, it's a hormone-like substance called a cytokine. Anybody heard of cytokines? So cytokines are small little hormones that trick on the immune system to increase inflammation. That comes from fat cells. The more fat cells you have, especially around your belly, the more inflammation that's going to cause. And we already talked about how it can disrupt the brain. This trigs fat cells inflammation also is the cause for heart disease. And insulin resistance, where does insulin come from?
Pancreas.
Pancreas. Yeah, insulin's manufactured in the pancreas. And if your insulin is manufactured in your pancreas and you're using more and more and more, enough so that you can create insulin resistance, what organ is likely to be tired?
The pancreas.
The pancreas is inflamed. And what happens in inflammation of the pancreas? Diabetes, for one thing. Type 2 diabetes is related to inflammation of the pancreas, killing beta cells so you can't even get the right insulin to go. Not that your body would listen to it even if you could. Do you guys get that we've got a web of problems going on here that have to be addressed, not just to look good by losing weight, but you got a real signal here. I'm overweight, my body's in trouble. It's not working right. It's leading to this thing I don't like about me, and I don't like it emotionally. But beyond that, which is where most of us stop because that's what we know and how we feel, beyond that, we've got some things that are actually interfering with our potential longevity and at least the enjoyment of health in that longevity. So I have two things that I want you to take away from today. One is you gotta heal into weight loss. But the other one is that's like a mantra I want you guys to start to think about. It's like mantra, mantra, mantra. Food should not interfere with my health. It's a new concept, but my food shouldn't be actively interfering with my health. And right now, can you see that it is? Food, I want you to say it, food shouldn't interfere with my health.
Food shouldn't interfere with my health.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
If we can grasp that and start to own that, we can start to make different kind of choices. And until you own that, sometimes we feel helpless around those choices. As soon as we get a feeling for hypereating, I need that. Yes? Mm-hmm. So that's why in our weight loss program, we are looking and individually evaluating everybody on these main areas. We have to know, what are your hormones doing? Are they in balance? What do you need? We have to know, what kind of inflammation is going on. We have to know, we have gut involvement or not. We have to know, do we have blood sugar issues? We've got to know, do we have stress issues that are also changing the adrenal hormone signaling, which is going to make the brain do different things too. We also want to look at these things in the diet. Is the diet too acid? Is it meeting the nutrition needs, the nutrient density needs of the body, or is it just giving us calories? And that's a big problem in what drives a lot of this, is that too many people, their diet is mostly calories. It is not high in nutrients and phytonutrients and vitamins and minerals, but calories, no problem. And calories give you a certain amount of energy until it stops working, but you lose health even with a high-calorie diet. Because energy isn't enough if you don't have the nutrients that make all of these pathways work. And then taking the mind into consideration. So we start off by running a test that lets us look at the gut. It's a urinalysis test. Lets us look at the gut and some of these other factors. We also do a heart rate variability test so that we can look at the brain, the stress balance of the brain, how it may be disrupted and becoming a big problem that has to be addressed in this. Some people need the brain addressed directly, and other people we can go through at the back door. Then we also look at the mind component of this. What are the habits and things like that? So we put all that information together, we sit down, and we will then have a real good idea of where you are, where your breakdowns in this phenomena are, and what needs to be addressed. And then we will address those and come up with a specific plan. Now, generally in the weight loss side of this thing, what we now know works physiologically is not we'll lose 1 or 2 pounds a week forever, because what happens is your brain's pretty smart, after a few weeks of that, it has figured you out, and it just changes your metabolism, so you have to go lower and lower and lower in calories to keep on that projection, and it doesn't really even make a difference when it comes to keeping it off. That they said, oh, it's slow will make you keep it off. No, that wasn't true either. So we now have found that if you look at how the body changes its metabolism to lose weight, losing weight quickly up front for short windows of time is actually a more effective way to not only for your body help you to lose it, but then to keep it off, in that you have to go through these windows of time where you maintain it, and then you go into another weight loss, and then maintain it, and another weight loss and maintain it, is a much more effective way to lose weight. And if you're doing that and handling these issues at the same time, then you're up-regulating your health this whole way. It becomes a very measurable thing after a few months. That usually you'll start to see those cholesterol problems change and those triglycerides come down. You'll start to see these things even in blood test, so that you can actually measure you're making health improvement, not just scale improvement. Yeah. So that's pretty much the weight loss program, what we're going to look at, and kind of how our approach is. We're going to approach this by each individual, supporting nutritional needs of each individual with supplements and the proper kind of weight loss for what we need within your goals and within your body's needs. And then add that mind component where we start working on those belief systems, as well as trying to get the brain to balance again in a more harmonic way that helps you not be so reactive to stress, which can kick you back out into all these disruptions. And normally that test, I think, is that visit would be like $115. And today I am going to offer you guys $49 for that. After we do that whole workup, if you want to follow our plans, then we can roll in that $49 to whatever we need to do for you. There isn't any set one price for that, because every individual is going to need their own specific thing. So that we can go over that at that point when we know what's really going on with you. So that's pretty much just to explain what's going on and what we target and why. And do you guys have any questions? I did a
Sure
good
we
enough
do, but our
job.
brains can't figure it out right now.
I've been seeing a periodontal dentist because I have two problem teeth, and he even explained, and he did a chart like this, but he even explained that the teeth have an input to all of this.
It actually does, because infection increases inflammation.
Inflammation. Yeah.
So infection in the teeth is a big hidden problem for a lot of people. The number one place that infection in the teeth shows up first in most people is the pericardium of the heart, the outside covering of the heart. And that is not ever good. Right? But it stimulates the immune system. Infection stimulates the immune system and inflammation. And that infection, and by the way, could also be in a gallbladder. It doesn't necessarily have to be just in the teeth. Any infection in the body, gut, gallbladder, teeth, will increase this, and then lupus. But you're absolutely right. So yeah, infection is another thing that is good to rule out.